So is it fair to say the President's proposed a budget that increases gross federal debt by over $8 trillion?
Well, Senator, it depends, obviously, how you measure in order to answer your question. Our budget reduces the deficit, the debt from where it would be without our policies. Obviously, there is going to be additional debt as long as we have a national debt to service, and that's something that we're going to work our way down. But I don't think that looking at the sequester the way you described it is well, it's not the way we look at it. The sequester was not meant to be policy. When it was enacted, it was not meant to be policy. It was meant to be so bad that we would avoid it. And the super committee, which the chair knows well.
But it did wind up being passed and signed.
Well, it was signed into law with the super committee created. The super committee did not hit the deadline.
If I had more time, I'd go into that one in a lot more depth. But you did eliminate most of the sequester, but
that was the goal.
I was just talking in actual dollars. It goes from 17.2 trillion to 25.4 trillion. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of belt tightening to me. And the Congressional Budget Office projects somewhat higher interest rates than the President's budget does. Even using those lower interest rates in the budget, OMB expects that the cost of servicing our debt will exceed the costs of national defense by 2020. What would be the effect on the deficits if interest rates were, say, 1 percentage point higher than forecast?
Well, clearly, it's very sensitive in interest rates. I think that if the question, I think, is how quickly can we reduce the deficit while we're contributing to the kind of economic growth that we need to create jobs and have the economy moving in the right direction. The sequester moves in the wrong direction. The sequester takes too much out of the economy in a ham-handed way that was designed to be bad policy, and it is bad policy. It's bad for defense. It's bad for domestic programs. So we intentionally replace it with more sensible policies. So that was not an accident. It was an intention. It was what the Joint Committee was hoped to do. I know the chair tried very hard to get the Joint Committee to an agreement. This is an attempt to get to that kind of an agreement on a bipartisan basis to make sensible policy that can balance the kind of growth in the short term and deficit reduction in the medium and long term. That was the goal when the sequester was created.
Well, I think the sequester could have been done a lot more diplomatically and a lot more beneficially. I didn't appreciate the notice that went out that it should be made painful. Our state had a budget deficit. They knew a year ago they were going to have a budget deficit. I think with sequester we knew we were going to have a deficit. Our governor said every department, every agency, every program needs to give me a 2% reduction, a 4% reduction, a 6% reduction, and an 8% reduction. He looked through those to see how consistent the reductions were in each of those areas and wound up having to do a 6% reduction. And you didn't hear a whine from the people around Wyoming that they'd been significantly hurt because they cut the worst first. So there are ways of doing that, but not unless there's some leadership from the White House. Along with the interest rate, of course, there's the near-term assumption that growth in gross domestic product is significantly rosier than what the CBO economic and budget outlook and also what's contained in the blue chip economic indicators, which is an average of 50 private forecasts. So the administration projects GDP growth being 1/2 a percentage point higher than the blue chip and 1.2% points higher than CBO. In 2014, this rosier outlook continues to be about 0.7 percentage points higher than both CPO and blue chip. Over the entire 10-year window, the administration predicts higher growth than blue chip forecasts. Lower interest, higher growth. Why are your economic forecasts so much higher than the CBO and the private sector?
Senator, depending on which years you look at, we're a little higher in some years, lower in other years. I think in the short term, we're already seeing the economy outperform the expectations that were originally used in the budget. So we're in the range of the mainstream assumptions. We're in the Fed's range of assumptions. We could go assumption by assumption. I don't think you're going to find overall that they're very inconsistent. There's never any two forecasts in each year are exactly the same, but ours are well within the band of mainstream forecasts.
I think the government's got a record of being phenomenally wrong. I yield my time.